Hi, this is Miss Benny, Aunt Benny, or Grandma, whatever one you want to call me. I'm going to do a lesson about another time that God uses a young boy to help him. The last lesson I taught was about the big picnic. And in the big picnic, Jesus used a young boy to help feed 5,000 people with just that little basket full of food. Jesus loved children, and he uses them a lot. You could probably find a lot of other examples of how God and Jesus used children to get a message across. Our message this time is going to be in the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 17. I'm going to read it and talk it to you, and I will sometimes skip down, and I'll tell you that. But you could read it also later. This is what was going on. This is a story that you've heard before, but let's look at it and think about it like God can do that for me also. Now, in chapter 17 and verse 1, there is a battle scene. The Israelites were up on one mountain or hill, and the Philistines were on the other hill, and that's how they met each other, getting ready to have a battle. But there is something different about this battle. Right in the middle, in verse 7, it starts talking about a giant. Now, I know you've heard of giants in Jack and the Beanstalk, or maybe some other stories, but this giant was bigger than any NBA basketball player we have. And if you've ever seen one of them, a lot of them are almost 7 feet tall. This giant was nearly 10 feet tall. And he stepped out of that Philistine line into the open, Goliath from Gath. Now, I want you to imagine what he looked like. He had on a bronze helmet, and I'm going to show you this. See the helmet he had on to cover his head and protect him. He was dressed in armor, about 126 pounds of armor. That's pretty heavy. He wore bronze shin guards, you can see those, and carried a bronze sword. His spear was like a fence rail. Well, the end of his spear weighed 40 pounds, which may be more than some of you weigh. And his shield bearer, they had a person that would carry their shield for them, was carrying it, and he walked ahead of him, and it was very heavy also. So what Goliath did, he would call out to the troops, the Israelite troops, and say, "Why bother using your whole army? Am I not Philistine enough for you? If you're committed to Saul, you are committed to Saul, aren't you? So pick your best fighter and pit him against me. If he gets the upper hand and kills me, the Philistines will all become your slaves. But if I win, then you will become our slaves. Give me a man. Let us fight it out together." Well, Saul was the king, and when he and his troops heard his challenge, they were terrified, and they lost all hope, because they didn't think anyone could beat this giant. Well, now we're going to talk a little bit about David. Now, David was the youngest of 8 sons. And Samuel had already come to David and told him and his father that David was going to be a king someday. So David would go back and forth from taking care of the sheep and his fields to going up to the palace. But apparently Saul didn't pay much attention to him because he didn't even know who he was. Now, David's 3 brothers were soldiers, and they were up at the battle. And they heard for 40 days the speech that Goliath said. So David was at home taking care of his sheep and doing a really great job for his dad, when his dad, Jesse, said, "Hey, would you come take something to your brothers? Take these this sack of cracked wheat and 10 loaves of bread and go to your brothers at the camp. And also take these 10 wedges of cheese to the captain of their division. Check in on your brothers to see whether they're getting along all right, and let me know how they're doing. Saul and your brothers and all the Israelites in the war with the Philistines in the Oak Valley. And I think Jesse was really worried about his sons. So David got up at the crack of dawn, which means right when the sun came up. And having arranged for someone to take care of his flock, he was very responsible. He took the food and he was on his way just as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp just as the army was moving into battle formation, crying out their war cry. Israel's and the Philistines moved in position, facing each other, battle ready. David left his bundles of food in the care of a sentry and ran to the troops who were deployed and greeted his brothers. And while they were talking, Goliath stepped up from the front lines of the Philistines and gave his usual challenge, "Send someone to fight me." And David heard him. And all the Israelites fell back when they saw the giant, totally frightened. The talk among the troops was, "Have you ever seen anything like this? This man openly and defiantly challenging Israel? The man who kills the giant will have it made. The king will give him a huge reward and offer his daughter as a bride and give his entire family a free ride." It means take care of them forever. Well, David was talking to the man standing around him, and he asked that question, "What's in it for the man who kills a Philistine?" And everybody told him what the king had said. And David said, "Who does he think he is anyway, this uncircumcised Philistine, taunting the armies of God alive?" And so Eliab, his oldest brother, heard David talking to the men, and he lost his temper with David. He said, "What are you doing here? Why aren't you minding your own business, tending that scrawny flock of sheep? I know what you're up to. You come down here to see the sights, hoping for a ringside seat at a bloody battle, haven't you?" David looked at him and said, "What is it with you?" "I think that's funny," replied David. "All I did was ask a question." So ignoring his brother, he turned to someone else and asked the same question and got the same answer as before. The things David was saying were picked up and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for David. "Master," said David, "don't give up hope. I'm ready to go and fight this Philistine." And Saul looked at David and said, "You can't go fight this Philistine. You're too young and inexperienced, and he's been fighting this business since before you were even born." And David said, "I've been a shepherd tending the sheep for my father. When a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I would go after it, knock it down, and rescue the lamb. If it turned on me, I would grab it by the throat and wring its neck and kill it. Lion or bear, it made no difference. I killed it. And I'll do the same to this Philistine pig who is taunting the troops of God alive. God, who delivered me from the teeth of the lion and the claws of the bear, will deliver me from this Philistine." And Saul shook his head and said, "Go, and God help you." Then Saul said, "David, you need to wear my armor." And he put his bronze helmet on his head, and remember what that looked like, big, heavy, and belted his sword over his armor. And David tried to walk, but he could hardly budge. It was all too heavy. I bet King Saul had a smile on his face when he saw that. And David told Saul, "I can't even move with this stuff on me. I'm not used to this." And he took it all off. Then David took his shepherd's staff, which was like a crook that he used for the sheep, selected 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in the pocket of his shepherd's pack, and with his sling in his hand approached Goliath. Now, we have slingshots, and when I was a kid, we had slingshots. But this time, this was different. He had to do it like this and sling it and hit the giant. Well, the giant had on all that armor too. You have to remember there wasn't much space to hit. And as he paced back and forth, the giant laughed at David. "You're a mere youngster. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that they have sent you out here with me. Come on, I'll make roadkill of you for the buzzards, and I'll turn you into a tasty morsel for the field mice." David answered, "You come with me with sword and spear and battle axe. I come at you in the name of God of the angel armies, the God of Israel's troops, and you curse and mock. This very day, God is handing you over to me. I'm about to kill you and cut off your head and serve up your bodies and the bodies of your Philistine buddies to the crows and the coyotes. The whole earth will know there's an extraordinary God in Israel. And everyone gathered there will learn that God doesn't save by means of sword or spear. The battle belongs to God. He is handing you on a platter." And we know, and I'm sure you do too, the rest of the story. David gave that giant the worst headache he had ever had, and the giant fell down dead, just with one stone. Even though he had 5, he didn't need to use them. So that's how he beat the giant. A young boy was God's servant, and he stood up for God and won the battle. Now I'm going to ask you if you will do something for me. Would you draw a picture of David and Goliath? You can see this picture. My son Rory drew this when he was about 7 years old. Or you could color a picture in a coloring book, or you could act this out with your parents. Wouldn't that be fun, and your brothers and sisters? But let me know if you have any questions, and if you could, send me a message with your pictures. I love you, and God loves you too. Bye-bye.